Hi everybody, welcome to Reading with Phoenix, and today we're reading a book called What You Can Change and What You Can't. The Complete Guide to Successful Self-Improvement. And this one's written by Martin E.P. Seligman, who happens to have a PhD in something, but let's not get too wrapped up in that. There's a chapter in this book, part 2 of this book, that I'd like to share with you. I was reading it this morning on the bus to work and found it kind of interesting. It's called Changing Your Emotional Life, Anxiety, Depression, and Anger, which is right there, just in case you don't believe me. So, on the show. Alright. The mind is a city like London, smoky and populous. It is a capital, like Rome, ruined and eternal, marked by the monuments which no one now remembers. For the mind, like Rome, contains catacombs, aqueducts, amphitheaters and palaces, churches and equestrian statues, fallen, broken, or soiled. The mind possesses and is possessed by all the ruins of every haunted, hunted generation's celebration. Interesting. That's a little excerpt from Delmore Schwartz's The Mind is an Ancient and Famous Capital, 1959. It's pretty old school. On with the interesting stuff. Everyday anxiety. Every day we experience, at least momentarily, 3 emotions we don't like: anxiety, depression, and anger. These are the 3 faces of dysphoria, i.e. bad feeling, the opposite of euphoria. These same 3 common emotions, when out of control, cause most mental illnesses. When we experience one, we want to get rid of it. Indeed, that is their very point. In this chapter, I will discuss what you can and cannot change about anxiety. In later chapters in this part, I will discuss depression and anger. But before exploring the exercising of these emotions, we should first ask what they are doing in your life in the first place. There are 2 kinds of wisdom to distinguish the one from the other at issue here. One is what you can and cannot change about dysphoria, the central topic of this book. The other, however, comes first. When should you not try changing? When should you listen to the message of your negative emotions, as uncomfortable as it may be, and change your external life rather than your emotional life? Everything inside. Bad weather inside. That's in bold here. Bad weather inside. People, by and large, are astonishingly attracted to the catastrophic interpretation of things. Not just neurotics, not just depressives, not just phobics, not just explosive personalities, but most of us, much of the time. Goethe said that in his entire life he had only a couple of completely happy days. I'm astonished that when my own life is going smoothly, work, love, and play all in place, which is not very often, I begin to fret about anything I can find that is wrong. What? The microwave is on the blink? This disaster is followed by repeated angry calls to the appliance service, worrying at 4 a.m., busy signals, cursing and blaming. I experience just as much total dysphoria over this triviality as I do when the big things, all of them, go badly. I call this common irrationality conservation of dysphoria, which is once again the opposite of euphoria: depression, anxiety, and anger. Why is dysphoria so common? Why is it conserved? Why do anxiety, anger, and sadness pervade so much of our lives, concurrent with so much success, wealth, and absence of biological need in the lives of privileged Americans, or anyone in the world that's privileged? The Russian psychologist Blyuma Zygonik, that's an interesting one, discovered early in the century that we remember unsolved problems, frustrations, failures, and rejections much better than we remember our own success and completions. The bitter always outlasts the sweet. Why do we hurt on the inside so much of the time? Here is an evolutionary approach to the question. This is the interesting part. The last geological epoch, save one, was the Miocene. Tropical savannas, fruit on the trees, good weather, a garden of Eden. Peace of mind, satisfaction, and optimism, all of which mirrored the good weather outside. Being adaptive were selected and flourished during this 20 million year long paradise. Okay. The last 100,000 years in the Pleistocene epoch, however, has seen bad weather. Ice, flood, drought, famine, heat, more ice, hurricanes. More ice, one catastrophe after another. Who survives this ordeal, and what kind of emotional life is selected by climatic disaster? Perhaps one that worries is future-oriented. This euphemism disguises the fact that future orientation is not lotus-eating contemplation of the future, but a state fraught with anxiety. A person with the mentality always considered the catastrophic interpretations and could always see the cloud that the silver lining hides behind. He even woke up at 4 in the morning to make sure he hadn't overlooked some subtle, awful portent. His brain endured because, by and large, during the Pleistocene, he was right. Disaster was just around the corner. This prudent neurotic passed his genes on. His blithe-spirited, Miocene-brained brothers and sisters were washed away in a flash flood, froze under the apple tree, or were trampled by mastodons. Here is a radical proposal. Homo-dysphorians, our species, evolved during the Pleistocene era from Homo sapiens, our predecessor. That's homo-dysphorians. It is fascinating that the big brain, which is 1,200 to 1,500 cubic meter cranial capacity, first appeared about 600,000 years ago. But Homo sapiens sat on the savannah, wrote no books, planted no corn, spoke little, and built no cathedrals. Not until recent times, 10,000 or so years ago, did progress, agricultural, civilization, the accumulation of knowledge, first dawn. Why the long delay? Maybe a big brain, sapiens, is not enough. Dysphoria, bad weather on the inside, is needed to galvanize more intelligence into action. Discontent, worry, depression, a pessimistic view of the future, but, as we will see, one with the underlying Miocene belief that a happy ending awaits, are necessary for agriculture, for culture, and for civilization. Each emotion of the dysphoric triad is a message. Insistent, uncomfortable, hurting, goading us to change our lives. With our daily dysphoria, we are in touch with the very state that makes civilization possible, that transforms berry gathering into agriculture, cave painting into Guernica, eclipse gaping into astronomy, and alas, axe handles into stealth bombers. Each emotion has specific content and goads for specific action, as listed below. Anxiety warns us that danger lurks. It fuels planning and replanning, searching for alternative ways out and rehearsing action. So anxiety sets us up to anticipate dangers and prepare for them. Depression marks the loss of something very dear to us. Depression urges us to divest and decathect, fall out of love and mourn, and ultimately resign ourselves to its absence. So it pretty much just helps us get over things. And closure. And anger, highly opinionated, warns that something evil is trespassing against us. It tells us to get rid of the object, to strike out against it. So that's just standing your ground in protection, really. In light of this speculation, how should we regard our own everyday dysphorias? Your mental tongue, in bold. Attend to your tongue right now. What is it doing? Mine is swishing around, well, mine's talking, but mine is swishing around near my lower right molars and has just found a minute fragment of last night's popcorn, debris from the Terminator 2. And like a dog at a bone, it is worrying in the firmly wedged flake. Now that I am attending to the popcorn flake, it is hard to go back to writing. Ha ha ha. Attend to your hand. So, and I'm not talking about mine right now. The one not holding this book. Right now, what is it up to? My left hand is boring in on an itch it just discovered under my left earlobe. Your tongue and your hands have, for the most part, a life of their own. You can bring them under voluntary control by consciously calling them out of their default mode to carry out your commands. Pick up the phone or stop picking that pimple. But most of the time they are on their own. They are seeking out small imperfections. They scan your entire mouth and skin surface, probing for anything going wrong. They are marvelous, non-stop grooming devices. They, not the more fashionable immune system, are your first line of defense against invaders. That is your tongue and your hands. If someone throws a rock at you, you block it with your hand, right? You don't even think about it. You thought your electric toothbrush was neat? It is Stone Age compared to the preventative maintenance, cleaning, waste detection, and debris removal that your tongue is so often carrying on your teeth and gums. Carrying out your teeth and gums. Anxiety. Now, anxiety is your mental tongue. Its default mode is to search for what may be about to go wrong. It continually and without your conscious consent scans your life. Yes, even when you are asleep, in dreams and in nightmares. It reviews your work, your love and your play until it finds an imperfection. When it finds one, it worries it. It tries to pull it out from its hiding place, where it is wedged inconspicuously under some rock. It will not let go. If the imperfection is threatening enough, anxiety calls your attention to it by making you uncomfortable. If you do not act, it yells more insistently, disturbing your sleep and your appetites. Do you find your tongue's swishy officiousness irritating now that I've called your attention to it? Do you now find twirling your hair as you read vexatious? There are behavioral techniques for reducing these activities, and there is even a drug that dampens such tics. Similarly, there are things you can do to reduce daily, mild anxiety. You can numb it with alcohol, Valium, or marijuana. You can take the edge off it with meditation or progressive relaxation. You can beat it down by becoming more conscious of the automatic thoughts of danger that often trigger anxiety, and then disputing them effectively. So if you have irrational fears, just by analyzing it and realizing they're out of place and inappropriate and unrealistic, you can dampen their effect. But do not overlook what your anxiety is trying to do for you. In return for the pain it brings, it prevents larger ordeals by making you aware of their possibility and goading you into planning for and forestalling them. It may even help you avoid them altogether. Think of your anxiety as the low oil light flashing on the dashboard of your car. Disconnect it and you will be less distracted and more comfortable for a while. But this may cost you a burned up engine. Our dysphoria should, some of the time, be tolerated, attended to, and even cherished. Alright, so that's the main interesting part that I wanted to share. How our anxiety and our anger and depression is the result. Was anxiety, anger, and depression? Yeah. Is the result of evolutionary emotions that are passed on through the genes, in terms of how we went through so many climatic disasters that we just instinctively, in a number of generations, developed this need to constantly look for the flaw, the danger, what's around the corner, and to be super cautious. It's the point now where it's habitual, even though there's not so much going on, life isn't so full of turmoil and instability and catastrophe. We still find ourselves habitually, just like the tongue in your mouth, trying to pick for dangers, pick for intruders, pick for flaws. Which is why the bitter outlasts the sweet, which is why people will look for the negatives naturally and reasons to feel anxious, because it's in our genes and it's part of what can't be changed. It can only be controlled by becoming more aware of realistic projections and unrealistic projections, realistic threats and petty threats that don't really warrant as much of a reaction as we might give them. I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought I'd share it. I'll read on anyway, but that was the main point. Feel free to keep watching on until I finish this part. Otherwise, it's all good. Thanks for watching. So, guidelines for when to try to change anxiety. Enough praise for everyday anxiety. Much of anxiety is wasted and needs relieving. So enough praise. This is for the nasty anxiety, which isn't useful. Few scientists have researched the question of when we should try to change our anxiety level rather than attend to its message. But I can give you my own guidelines. What distinguishes most of the advice in the rest of this book from that in a self-help books generally is that mine consists of my integration of vats of serious research, leavened with a dollop of clinical wisdom. My advice in this case, in contrast, has more fallible backing, some clinical law, and some common sense. Some of our everyday anxiety, depression, and anger go beyond their useful function. Most adaptive traits fall along a normal spectrum of distribution, and the capacity for bad weather inside for everyone some of the time means that some of us will have terrible weather all of the time. In general, when the hurt is pointless and recurrent. When, for example, anxiety insists that we formulate a plan, but no plan will work, it is time to take action to relieve that hurt. There are 3 hallmarks indicating that anxiety has become a burden that wants relieving. First, is it rational or irrational, I should say. We must collaborate our bad weather inside against the real weather outside. Is what you are anxious about out of proportion to the reality of the danger? For some of you living in the shadow of terminal illness, violence, unemployment, or poverty, anxiety is often founded in reality. Understandably so. But for most of you, daily anxiety may be a vestige of a geological epoch that you are no longer living in. Is your anxiety out of proportion to the reality of the danger that you fear? Here are some examples that may help you answer this question. All of the following are not irrational. Not irrational. A firefighter trying to smother a raging oil well burning in Kuwait repeatedly wakes up at 4 in the morning because of flaming terror dreams, nightmares. A mother of 3 smells perfume in her husband's shirts and, consumed by jealousy, broods about his infidelity, reviewing the lists of possible women over and over. A woman is the sole source of support for her children. Her co-workers start getting pink slips. She has a panic attack. A student who has failed 2 of his midterm exams finds, as finals approach, that he can't go to sleep for worrying. He has diarrhea most of the time. Because that's totally irrelevant. The only good thing that can be said about your fears is that they are well-founded. In contrast, all of the following are irrational, out of proportion to the danger. An elderly man, having been an offender bender, broods about travel and will no longer take cars, trains, or airplanes. An 8-year-old child, his parents having been through an ugly divorce, wets his pants at night. He is haunted with visions of his bedroom ceiling collapsing on him. See, that one I don't really agree with. Like, an ugly divorce could traumatize a child. His dreams of the ceiling collapsing on him is kind of understandable. I don't see how it's irrational. I mean, unless all dreams are irrational. I don't get that. Anyway. A college student skips her final exam and then shake uncontrollably. That's pretty irrational. I want to be anxious about that. A housewife who has an MBA and who accumulated a decade of experience as a financial vice president before her twins were born is sure her job search will be fruitless. She delays preparing her resume for a month. The second hallmark of anxiety out of control is, besides irrationality, paralysis. Anxiety intends action. Plan, rehearse, look into shadows for lurking dangers and change your life. But when anxiety becomes so strong that it is unproductive, no problem solving occurs. And when anxiety is extreme, it paralyzes you. Has your anxiety crossed this line? Here are some examples. A woman finds herself housebound because she fears that if she goes out, she will be bitten by a cat, or a donkey, or a lemur, whatever. Consumed by the fear that his girlfriend is unfaithful, a young swain never calls her again. Swain? Swain? Really? That's cool. Whatever that word is, I gotta look it up when I get home, but swain, that's another one to add to your vocabulary, peoples. Alright, a salesman broods about the next customer hanging up on him and makes no more cold calls. You want to be a very successful salesman if you're that paralyzed at the notion of being rejected. A fourth grader is often chosen last for teams and refuses to go to school anymore because everybody hates me. That's a bit dramatic. A writer, afraid of the next rejection, slip, stops writing. So these are the ways that your anxiety to extremes can paralyze you. The final hallmark, besides irrationality and paralysis, of intense anxiety is, well, intensity. Duh. Is your life dominated by anxiety? Here, it goes on about how a doctor develops a questionnaire. I'll let you maybe read it. Can you read that? There's a questionnaire. There's the questions. You can do it yourself if you want. There's all the questions that some doctor wrote up, some fancy pants. Okay, you can pause on it if you want to read it. But apparently you answer those questions and you circle a number for almost never, sometimes, often, or almost always, depending on the question. Those are the answers. And then you score up your score, and it will tell you what it means. So there's that bit. That's talks about adding up your score, and it continues on to the next page. Let's get this right. Can you see most of that? You got that? And the next bit, wait, you can't really see. I've got to. There we are. That's better. You got that? And all right, I can read this bit. So, alright, so lowering your everyday anxiety. Everyday anxiety level is not a category to which psychologists have devoted a great deal of attention. The vast bulk of work on emotion is about disorders, helping abnormal people to lead normal emotional lives. In my view, not nearly enough serious science has been done to improve the emotional life of normal people to help them lead better emotional lives. This task has been left by default to preachers, profiteers, advice columnists, and charismatic hucksters on talk shows. This is a gross mistake, and I believe that one of the obligations of qualified psychologists is to help members of the general public try to make rational decisions about improving their emotional lives. Enough research has been done, however, for me to recommend two techniques that quite reliably lower everyday anxiety levels. Both techniques are cumulative rather than one-shot fixes, just like most things that last for a while. They require 20 to 40 minutes a day of your valuable time. The first is progressive relaxation, done once or better twice a day for at least 10 minutes. In this technique, you tighten and then turn off each of the major muscle groups of your body. till you are wholly flaccid. It is not easy to be highly anxious when your body feels like jello. More formally, relaxation engages a response system that competes with anxious arousal. So you can't be anxious once you're relaxed. If this technique appeals to you, I recommend Dr. Herbert Benson's book, The Relaxation Response. So that's progressive relaxation as one way to lower your anxiety. The next technique is called regular meditation. It's along similar lines, really. You probably do both at the same time. Transcendental meditation, or TM, is one useful, widely available version of this. You can ignore as the beneficial technique. You can ignore the cosmology in which it is packaged if you wish, and treat it simply as the beneficial technique that it is. Twice a day for 20 minutes in a quiet setting, close your eyes and repeat a mantra, a syllable whose sonic properties are known to yourself. So repeat a mantra to yourself. And a mantra is a syllable whose sonic properties are known. Interesting way of putting it. Meditation works by blocking thoughts that produce anxiety. It complements relaxation, which blocks the motor components of anxiety, but leaves the anxious thoughts untouched. So that's why if you just ease your body, it doesn't do anything for your thoughts. Whereas if you meditate, then that deals with the anxious thoughts that are causing the body to get all anxious. So both of them done together can work. So yeah, done regularly, meditation usually induces a peaceful state of mind. Anxiety at other times of the day wanes, and hyper-arousal from bad events is dampened. Done religiously, transcendental meditation probably works better than relaxation alone. So you might as well just meditate and ease your mind and your body at the same time. There also exists a quick fix. The minor tranquilizers, Valium, Dramamine, Librium, and their cousins, relieve everyday anxiety. So does alcohol. Not that we'd suggest it. In moderation. Even excess in moderation, right? Everything in moderation, anyway. The disadvantage, the advantage of all of these is that they work within minutes and require no discipline to use. Especially alcohol. They'll rob you of your discipline. Their disadvantages outweigh their advantages, however. The minor tranquilizers make you fuzzy and somewhat uncoordinated as they work. A not uncommon side effect is an automobile accident on tranquilizers. Tranquilizers soon lose their effect when taken regularly, as they are habit-forming and probably addictive. The same is true of alcohol, and it is even more clearly addictive. Alcohol, in addition, produces gross cognitive and motor disability in lockstep with its anxiety relief. When taken regularly over long periods, deadly liver and brain damage ensues. So you'd end up being a veggie with a fucked bladder, pretty unhealthy, but you won't be anxious anymore. Well, you'll probably still be pretty anxious. I am, incidentally, no Puritan about drugs or about quick fixes, so when I advise you against your use, as I do here, against their use, it is not out of priggishness. If you crave quick and temporary relief from acute anxiety, either alcohol or minor tranquilizers taken in small amounts and only occasionally will do the job. They are, however, a distant second best to progressive relaxation and meditation, which are each worth trying before you seek out psychotherapy or in conjunction with therapy. Unlike tranquilizers and alcohol, neither of these techniques is likely to do you any harm. I urge you to weigh your everyday anxiety. If it is not intense, or if it is moderate and not irrational or paralyzing, live with it. Listen to its dictates and change your outer life, rather than your emotional life. If it is intense, or if it is moderate but irrational or paralyzing, act now to reduce it. In spite of its deep evolutionary roots, intense everyday anxiety is often changeable. Meditation and progressive relaxation practiced regularly can change it permanently. But anxiety, when intense and unremitting, can be a sign of a disorder that requires exercising rather than just acknowledgement. The next 3 chapters are about the 3 anxiety disorders we know the most about: panic, phobia, and obsession, and what is changeable and not changeable about them. Cool. That's the end of part 4 of this awesome book. So yeah, some interesting information on anxiety and the role that it plays in our lives and how it can be useful, and also how it can be extreme and can disadvantage us and act as a barrier to progress, you know, and as an obstacle. And it also provides the ways to get over it. So that's pretty cool. If you're interested in hearing about the next part, about the phobias and all those different things, feel free to comment, and I'll do another segment reading the next chapter. It's a pretty interesting book. I like the very first line. This is one of my favorite quotes, actually. And this is right at the beginning on the first page. You can actually read it yourself. It's one of my favorite quotes. Okay, wait, can you read that? So, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's pretty awesome. Part of the serenity prayer. Yeah, I'll see if there's a chapter page here. So, and if you want me to do any reading on any of these contents, feel free. There's part 1. Then you can just pause this if you want to read it. There's part 2. And part 3. Ooh, sex. I bet everyone's going to want to hear about what it has to say to do with sex. And there's also part, no, that's not what I want to show you. There it is. Part 4. Shedding the skins of childhood, depth and change the theory. So there are all the different sections and the contents. And it's all, like I said, it's all about realizing your limits and what you can and can't change, helping you to change what you can and helping you to accept what you can't, and maybe it provides the courage to, or the wisdom to know the difference, I guess. So yeah, that's this book. Feel free to comment if you'd like to me to do any more readouts on any of those chapters or parts. Otherwise, I'll see you next time for some other, you know, book. Or I've also got my walking talking segments, which is just me going around with the camera rambling and sharing my thoughts at the time. There's also some random skit videos you'll find in the monologue and duologue section. And a duologue is pretty much myself with 2 personalities acting all skits and split personality like, and having dialogues with myself, i.e. duologues, because it's like dual character. So there's some of that. There's music videos, you know, doof music videos, just random stuff of all kinds, whether it be for a laugh, a bit of entertainment, a bit of information. Feel free to go to my channel, check out what you will, like, share, subscribe, all of that jazz, and thank you very much for watching. Catch you next time for whatever it is you're watching. Cheers, man. Take it easy, yo.